Greetings on behalf of Dr. James Cameron, the only known survivor of a lynching and founder of America's Black Holocaust Museum.
America's Black Holocaust Museum.
Next on Black Nouveau.
Good evening and welcome to this edition of Black Nouveau. I'm Milton Dockery.
And I'm Faithe. We're glad you could join us. This week, we'll look at the rebirth of America's Black Holocaust Museum.
We'll examine how multiple myeloma and HIV are affecting the African American community and preview some music specials you won't want to miss.
But first, the nation was saddened last week with yet another school shooting where 3 students died and 2 more were wounded in Ohio.
Here in Milwaukee, within the last 2 months, 4 Milwaukee public school students have been killed. Their deaths did not occur on school grounds, but the culture of violence exists there as well. Last week, the MPS board had a filled-to-capacity public meeting on the topic of curbing the violence. Our guest, Dr. Michael Bonds, is the head of the MPS board and called the public hearing. Dr. Bonds, welcome back to Black Nouveau, sir.
Thank you for inviting me back to the program.
Dr. Bonds, what was the impetus behind the public hearing, sir?
Well, the frustration with the level of violence occurring in the community, and then it's coming back into the schools. Since December, MPS has lost 4 students to violence, and that don't include the number of students that have been shot. We just talking about the 4 that was actually killed. And then if you go back to the beginning of the school year, we actually lost additional students. But what was troublesome to me was it seemed like there was a lack of community outcry. And this is a community problem. When you look at the condition of the city of Milwaukee, we probably live in one of the most depressed cities in America. When you talk about the 4th poorest city in America, the highest black male unemployment, the highest single family heated households in the nation. You go on and on, virtually every indicator, negative indicator, if you're African American, you're impacted by. And these problems are spilling over into the classroom. And I felt this wasn't an MPS issue, but a community as a whole issue. So I called for community action to deal with violence among our youth.
Were you surprised that there is not more of a community outcry, sir?
Personally, I'm not, because I've been in Milwaukee all my life. And I know that, in my opinion, Milwaukee is almost a city of illusion where you have all these numbers in front of you, and there's an initial outcry, and there may be a study or commission, then it go away. And I've seen that all my life in Milwaukee. So it didn't surprise me, but I will argue that if the level of violence was in any other school district in Wisconsin, it would have been a statewide outcry, definitely a community outcry.
Let me share some numbers with you. And this was from a MPS Youth Risk Behavior Survey in 2011. Just a few things. 43% report violence as a problem at their schools. 48% report gang activity at school. Don't want to be all negative though. 80% have 1 or more adults besides parents whom they can speak with. 50% have at least 1 teacher or adult at school that they can talk with if they have a problem. How will you use this survey to help curb violence, sir?
Well, it gives us an instrument to find out what students are saying. We know that students feel that they don't have people that they can turn to. So we're able to use that data and to form policies and programs to try to address those issues. But what I do want to focus on, these are just the MPS students that you talk about from the survey, but we got students in the community, because this was a community call, because it's just not MPS students that are being impacted, students outside. So that's out the district.
It's obvious you taught a very major concern. The room was overflowing. What do you think is so different this time?
Well, I think people are looking for a vehicle to help, and I think people do care, and I think people have been waiting for someone to take the lead in this effort. But I just think that people are feeling hopeless now. When you look at the conditions of the city of Milwaukee and what's going on in the state of Wisconsin, these are unprecedented terms. Being a Milwaukee native the last 50 years, I could say I've never seen a sense of hopelessness in the community that I'm seeing now. When you look at the devastating cuts from the state level, $80 million in public education, cuts to health care. When you look at the unemployment, black male unemployment, and up to 70% in some neighborhoods, just the sheer devastation, you see a sense of hopelessness. In the past, there was some hope that something would be done, but this is kind of a unique period in Milwaukee challenge where, in Milwaukee history, where this level of hopelessness has been one I've never seen before in my whole life in Milwaukee.
Now, beyond the hearings, what other strategies will you develop?
Well, next week I'm hoping to have a second hearing on March 17th in the morning from 9 o'clock to 11:30 a.m. And what we're hoping to do is look for long-term sustainable efforts. We're asking volunteers in different areas to come and work with us in the schools, whether it's safety patrol, tutoring, working with recess, walking in the neighborhood, just being eyes on in the community to try to reduce some of the violence. And but also I'm looking to join partnership where we can finance some maybe youth program, recreation. A couple years ago, we funded the Summer Youth Employment Program, and I'm going to talk with the superintendent about restarting that program again, and where we have put hundreds of kids to work funding the City of Milwaukee and Milwaukee County Summer Youth Program, funding a portion of it.
I've heard several themes coming out, but based on your response to me, what I hear you saying is this is going to be a holistic approach that involves everybody within the community.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you are looking for parents and citizens to do, though?
Well, I'm looking for parents to come forward because everyone has a talent to and some service that they can offer, whether it's tutoring, just being a peer mentor, or a mentor to a kid, or working in the schools, working with kids, hall monitors, just a whole variety of things. That whatever talent you have, we want to use it.
Okay. What are some of the things that you heard from parents and students last night at this hearing?
Well, the biggest thing I heard was people want some action. You know, people are aware of the issues and everything, but they want to move beyond rhetoric. They want actual concrete results. And they talked about some of the successful programs, but at the same time, they raised concerns about some of the challenges. Okay. And one of the things I'm really hoping for is that we can utilize this momentum from that meeting last night to generate resources that will result in something long-term sustainable.
Not to cut you off there, but 2 prongs, and very briefly, how can people volunteer and how can they get more information?
Well, right now we have a volunteer site on Milwaukee Public School website, the portal, or you could call the superintendent office at 475-8002 to get information.
Dr. Michael Bonds, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for inviting me on the show.
Yes, sir.
Multiple myeloma is a cancer of the blood that causes anemia and makes bones more likely to break. The disease is more common in men than women, and African American men are at a high risk for getting the disease. We are joined now by Reverend Anthony Evans and Dr. Doris Brown from the National Black Church Initiative to discuss multiple myeloma. How do you get this disease?
Well, it's really an important question, but we don't have an answer for how you get this disease. We just know that it impacts African Americans at a disproportionate rate compared to Caucasians, and males more than females. We can treat the disease. It is incurable, but again, there are things that you can do to minimize the complications of this disease, such as the bone pain and the fractures and spinal cord compression that comes with it. And so we want to focus on how to maintain good bone health.
You're talking about maintaining, but what are the symptoms?
Okay, myeloma again is a blood cancer that is the second most common blood cancer that we have in the United States, and it affects about 70,000 Americans are living with this disease. You can come in with pain primarily, or a fracture when you don't know that you have some disease going on. And when you present with that bone pain and get a diagnosis, that leads you to go to get your treatment to try and minimize some of the other complications, such as kidney failure and anemia and some of the other problems. Now, this disease, again, impacts the bone marrow and a component of the bone marrow called the plasma cells. And when it starts to grow very rapidly and expand, that's what causes the pain, and it weakens the bone, so you're at increased risk for the fractures that we see with this disease.
Is this disease sometime misdiagnosed or overlooked when people go in?
The plasma cell is a very distinct white cell that's there. The individual may have some difficulty in getting it diagnosed in the sense that they overlook the pain and think that it's just so osteoporosis or arthritis and that it's going to go away, when in fact it may be something much more complicated and difficult. And so what we want to do is to encourage individuals to have that dialogue, to see their healthcare provider and not sort of say it's arthritis and it'll go away, because it may be something much more serious, such as myeloma.
You're saying you want people to get tested. Is this why the National Black Church Initiative have stepped in to bring attention to this disease?
Yes, we have. We have stepped in for two reasons. One is that a year and a half ago, we declared a national health emergency in our churches when we looked at the different categories of health disparity issues. And secondly, we wanted to demonstrate our enormous network of getting the word out in terms of improving good health information in our community. We have about 34,000 churches. We are able to distribute up to 15.7 million pieces of information. So in this case, we wanted to get the word out concerning good bone health, and that's why we have partnered with Novartis in this case, but we also partnered with the federal government, the state government, or whoever will work with us to create an educational tool called To Stay in the Game and Maintain Your Frame. And these are a series of videotapes that teaches an individual how to be safe and prevent falls in the common areas of their home, in the kitchen, in the restroom, and other areas as well. So we have this extraordinary network. We certainly want to use that extraordinary network, and we have a history of doing it as well. And we do it, and in this case, we'll be doing it for the next 7 years to improve African American health. But in this case, we focusing on multiple myeloma. We are focusing on our African American males over 60 years old, and certainly connecting them to for their physician or health entities in the community so that they can improve their health.
How do you, once someone may think they have it or know they have it, how do you maintain it? Since you say it's not curable, what does one do in working with their doctor to maintain themselves once you know you have it?
Yes, well, once you've been diagnosed with the disease, you want to try and strengthen your bones so that you can do things like strength training exercises to try and increase your bone strength. You can take vitamin D and calcium to help increase that strength, increase the fruits and vegetables in your diet. And then there are other exercises, weight-bearing exercises that you can do, climbing stairs being one easy one that you can do, maybe taking yoga as another one. And when I indicated getting tested, there's not like a screening test that you can get for multiple myeloma. You come in with symptoms and then you are diagnosed, and those are the tests that you go through to get your diagnosis and stage your disease. Then you get on treatment, and as I said, now you have the complications being the fractures and spinal cord compression or kidney disease, and so you want to minimize those complications, and this is why we're focusing on bone health as one of those complications that we want to minimize.
How can people get more information about this disease?
Well, you can go to maintainyourframe.com, whereby you can get some additional information, or call directly to National Black Church Initiative. So we are here to make sure that there's a continuous of care. Not only your church is concerned about your spiritual health, we're concerned about your physical health as well. So this is our way of making sure that our membership get as much accurate health information as possible. In this case, we're talking about maintain your frame in your terms of good bone health.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If it's March, it must be MPTV membership drive time, and that often leads to some real old school sights and sounds. Here are two programs that should bring back some real memories.
Patti LaBelle hosts an all-star lineup, uniting the superstars of 70s soul on PBS.
Everybody say,
The Best of Soul Train, featuring the very best acts from the legendary Soul Train series.
lean on me. Ooh, la, 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 la. We should have been a duo. Let's get it on, baby. La, 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 la.
Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves.
That clip is from America's Black Holocaust Museum's new home, the World Wide Web. Reggie Jackson is the museum's head griot. Mr. Jackson, welcome to Black Nouveau, sir.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
First and foremost, define a griot for us.
Griot is a term used in Western Africa to describe the oral historians, the keepers of the history of that particular community that they're from.
Pretty consistent too, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
The museum is now virtual. How did that come about?
Well, we've been working since 2008, since the museum closed. We've been trying to figure out a way to bring the museum back into existence. And so we've tried a variety of different things, and we kind of came up with the idea of let's have a web presence, a virtual museum that will allow people who've never been to the museum to kind of get a tour of the museum online. And so what we did is we developed the idea of putting together different exhibits that would have been in the museum had it still been open so that they can kind of see some of those things that we talked about.
If memory serves me correctly, when Dr. Cameron was there, you had a hell of a collection. What can visitors expect to see online?
Well, right now we have a couple exhibits that are up and running, and we're still developing some of the others. Right now, the one that we're most proud of is the one that we really want to welcome people to, is our memorial to lynching victims. And what it is we've been going through lists. There's 3 different databases of lynching victims. So what we've done is we've gone through those lists, created our own database, and we've been putting names of those lynching victims in our memorial. Right now we have a little bit less than 2,000 names online on the website. We're working on getting the other 1,800 or so on there. And what we wanted to do with that exhibit was to humanize those lynching victims. What we want to do is put their names, the dates that they were lynched, and if we can find personal information about them, actually have like a bio of some of those lynching victims so that people get to kind of see who they were as a person, not just see them as this lynching victim.
Will you include some of Dr. Cameron's victims, like I think Thomas Ship?
Yes, sir. One of the exhibits that's there, we have it's in links by state. And so we have several of the states there, including Indiana. We have a link there for Thomas Ship and for Abraham Smith. And you can go to the website, you click on the state of Indiana, and you'll see some information about Thomas. There's actually a picture of him on the website right now as well.
To push this further, you have on the site Africa before colonization, excuse me. That's before the institution of slavery. You also have things on the Jim Crow era. Talk about one of those things for me.
Okay, what we want people to understand is that the Black Holocaust is basically the history that Africans have endured going back to the time before they were enslaved, during the transatlantic slave trade, dealing with all of the history of the enslavement, the Middle Passage, dealing with time in the United States as an enslaved population, the Jim Crow era, all the way up to modern day injustices that we're dealing with. So we want people to get a better idea of what the Africans were doing back in Africa before this period of enslavement happened, because oftentimes when we talk about African American history, it actually starts on the slave ship. We want to take people back to Africa, let them know about some of the great kingdoms back in Africa, the kingdom of Mali, the kingdom of Songhai, the kingdom of Nouveau, all of these different places in Africa that people are typically unaware of. We want to bring that to fruition so people know that there was life before slavery.
Gotcha. Is the virtual home the museum's final resting place?
No, this is just phase 1 of our plan. We have a strategic plan in place. This is phase one of our plan to bring the museum back, and eventually somewhere down the line we're hoping that all of these things that we're doing lead to us having a brick and mortar museum once again.
You say eventually, any type of time frame?
Well, we haven't really placed a time frame on it, because what we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that we had a plan in place and did it systematically, and then kind of see how people react to it. You know, we put the virtual museum online. We've had great reaction to it thus far. A lot of good things have come out of it in terms of people responding that they like what's on the museum's website. And so as we move forward, we're hoping that we build a larger group of people that are working on this project. Right now, there's a small group of volunteers that have been working tirelessly for a number of years trying to bring the museum back. And so what we want to do is to bring more people on board, get more people with different types of expertise. One of the ideas that we're working on with the museum's website and the exhibits is to get local historians involved in putting content on the website.
Okay. Now, you mentioned you're able to track that and your viewers that are visiting the site.
Right.
Briefly, what are some of the comments you're getting? Type of
Well,
feedback?
We've gotten quite a bit of feedback telling us mostly that they're happy that we're still here. A lot of people thought that the museum was dead and gone and that everyone who was involved had pretty much given up on it. Members of the board, I've been on the board since 2005, Dr. Cameron's son Virgil, we've been working with another dedicated group of people, just trying our best to keep Dr. Cameron's legacy alive. And when we made the announcement that we had the virtual museum coming back on Dr. Cameron's birthday, would have been 98 years old. I'm sure he would have been very proud on that day. And when the word went out about that, we started to get immediate feedback. People were very happy to hear that, you know, we have presence again, that Dr. Cameron's legacy is still alive, that, you know, we're here to help you. What can we do? What do you guys need for us to do? So we've gotten, you know, responses from people around the country saying that we're here to help you. You know, what way can we contribute to bringing the museum back?
Very briefly, how are you getting the word out?
Well, we sent out a public service announcement to local media, to national media. We've been on several radio programs. I'm actually going to be on a radio program in New York next week. We had an interview that was on National Public Radio, a couple of our board members this past week. So there's a variety of different methods. Anything that we can. We have a Facebook page that's active and up and running. We're asking people to like us on Facebook. There are links on the website to some other social media outlets as well. So if people just go to the museum's website, abhmuseum.org, they can kind of surf around the museum's website and find other ways to let other friends of theirs know about it.
Mr. Reggie Jackson, thanks for joining us, sir.
Okay, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Women make up 1 in 4 of all new HIV cases. And of these new infections, 2 out of 3 are African American women. Joining me are Cynthia Jasper and Shayna Brown from the Black Health Coalition of Wisconsin to discuss the SISTA project. Ladies, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having us.
Shayna, what is the SISTA project and what do you do?
Well, SISTA is an acronym that stands for Sisters Informing Sisters on the Topics of AIDS. And basically it's a social skills training intervention for sexually active African American women, particularly ages 15 to 29, but it's open to all African American women. And we just try to reduce their sexual risks when it comes to sexual behavior and their risk for HIV infection.
Why this particular age group?
Well, those are women of childbearing ages, and statistics show that there is a high STD infection rate, so we know they're having sex. So if we can stop them while they're younger, then we can prevent it while they're older.
Cynthia,
yes.
Let's talk a little bit about why this is still a problem here in Milwaukee, especially amongst this age group. Why is that?
Well, reasons why is because, well, just like Shayna was saying, that women are still sexually active and they're into relationships and having babies, even though the pregnancy rate went down, but the STD rate went up. Shayna has more information as far as statistics and things like that, as far as why
it still is a big problem in Milwaukee. What is the statistics here in Milwaukee?
Well, right now in Milwaukee, African American women make up about 60% of all HIV infection rates. HIV is the leading cause of death among African American women ages 25 to 44 in the United States, and African American women make up 12% of the U.S. female population, but we still account for 65% of all AIDS infections in the United States. So you can see that's very disproportionate when it comes to other races. So it's important that African American women learn these tools that they need to so they can stay HIV negative.
Let's talk about some of those tools. What kind of information are you giving the young women in these classes? What do you tell them?
Well, the first, we teach them about ethnic and gender pride. We have to teach them about where they come from and who they are, what it feels like to be an African-American woman. And also we teach them HIV/AIDS education, assertiveness skills, because when it comes to relationships, we all know that women, we sort of bow down when it comes to our guys, and we sort of teach them to feel comfortable about saying no when they don't feel comfortable having sex, or saying I want to use a condom. And also we teach them about coping skills and behavioral self-management.
And how long are the classes?
They're 2 hours. It's 5 sessions and they're 2 hours long.
So 5 sessions, 2 hours long. What kind of feedback are you getting from your students?
More time. They want to stay here longer because it's 5 weeks in a row, and then once it's over, we stay in contact with them, but we don't see them as much. So they would like to, you know, they come to all the other meetings that we hold at our organization. It's other things that they want to learn about, such as more STDs and the female anatomy, because they have these parts and they're using them, but they don't even know what they do. Like, they didn't know what ovaries do.
Right.
So things like that. We've even had where mothers and daughters were in the same group, and they were able to discuss different types of issues that they never discussed before, and they're all grown. So we've been getting some very positive feedback.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that positive feedback. And you're mentioning mothers and daughters in the same class. I mean, how is that also helping build stronger relationships so that the women understand that they can talk to one another in a family?
And I think one of the things that does happen is that I think Cynthia agrees that sometimes women can put each other down and don't really bond with each other. So through this group, women that didn't know each other at all became friends and continue to do things afterwards and are able to talk openly with other women instead of men about, you know, should I do this or not, and things like that.
In the class, is there opportunity for role playing for women to actually, you know, kind of be in a situation and say, this is what happened to me at home with my boyfriend or my husband, and I'm not sure how to handle it? Is that available?
That comes up a lot. We do role play in our group, and sometimes it may be a situation where it may get a little too real, so we have to pull it back because we never want anybody to put themselves in a situation where, you know, if we tell you this is what you should do and it puts you in a risky situation, we would never want that to happen. So we try to keep it fiction, but real at the same time.
How can people get more information if they want to know a little bit more about the SISTA project?
Okay, well, they can give us a call at 933-0064. My extension is 204, and Shana's is 203.
Wonderful. Thank you, ladies, so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And that wraps up this edition of Black Nouveau.
Remember, in the coming week, do something to expand your world. Good night.
Good night, and thanks for watching.